We begin this Sunday morning with breaking news from Israel. Over 1,300 Israelis are dead this morning, while more than 2,300 Palestinians are dead, as well as 29 Americans as the war in Israel enters a ninth day. And Israel fights Hamas terrorists' unprovoked attacks. Israel dropped leaflets above the Gaza Strip over the weekend and Friday, advising citizens to move south. They suggested it was readying a ground assault on Gaza to retaliate for the worst terrorist attack on Israel since 9/11. Hamas is reportedly holding 150 hostages, including American citizens, right now. Here now with the very latest in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Michael McCaul. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And I want to get to this Iran message sent to Israel over the weekend. But before we get there, you have been given a briefing in the Situation Room. Can you assess where we are on this war right now?
Well, it's getting very dangerous. I think the concern, Maria, is an escalation beyond the Gaza Strip. Right now, we're trying to contain it, trying to get the innocent civilians south towards Egypt and open up Egypt so they can go in. But the escalation from Hezbollah is real. The role of Iran is very real in this. Hezbollah has 100,000 rockets that could overload the Iron Dome itself in Israel. We do not want that two-front war. And so that is a great concern. In addition to ISIS in Syria and Iran-backed militias in Iraq, and the Taliban is making noise about coming in as well. We don't want a global jihad in Jerusalem.
Unbelievable. Let's get to this message that Iran sent to Israel on Saturday night, stressing that it does not want further escalation in the war. And it said that if it sees Israel go in this ground attack, which we are expecting, they will have to intervene, and Israel will face a quote-unquote earthquake.
Frightening. This is the nightmare scenario we've always been worried about. Israel, there's no question they're going to go into Gaza. It's their 9/11. They want justice. They're going to go in and take out Hamas, which is like ISIS. I went to that kibbutz where they killed all the little children there and decapitated them. It's going to happen. So then what is Iran going to do? Are they just going to help their proxies like Hezbollah and others, or are they going to get directly involved in this conflict? Either way, Maria, my committee is charged with war and peace. My committee has the power to declare war or issue an authorized use of military force. We don't want to do that. But if this escalates, that's what worries me the most.
Tell me what you're referring to. Are you saying that the United States will have to get involved?
Well, if we want to stop, say, Israel from obliterating Iran, yes. And that would be a question for the American people. Do we want to get involved to defend Israel? Right now, we're just providing weapons and training. We're not involved. We're not firing our missiles from our destroyer ships in the Mediterranean. But the minute that happens, it does trigger the War Powers Act. And so that's why we have to be so careful here and pray that it does not escalate to that level, because what would follow after that would be very bloody.
Congressman, I want to get your take on how we got here as well. I know that this Robert Malley is under investigation for mishandling classified information. He was one of the leaders within certainly the Obama administration and the Biden administration negotiating with Iran to get back into an Iran deal.
Yeah. This is what's you can't make this kind of stuff up, Maria. I mean, this is our top negotiator to Iran. Our special envoy, Mr. Malley. He is now under investigation by the FBI for mishandling of classified information. Well, what did he do with that classified information? We don't know exactly yet, but we do know that he was in talks and negotiations with Iran over their nuclear weapons program. Meanwhile, there's this independent think tank, the Iranian Expert Initiative. And he was in association with this think tank that interfaced with the foreign minister of Iran again. And then one of these three associates is currently the chief of staff to the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations at the Pentagon, who is a part of this independent think tank that interfaces with the foreign minister of Iran. This is getting a little too close, and getting a little too nervous with this coziness between Iran and this administration and State Department and Defense Department. I would view it as an infiltration or an opening of the gates of Iran into our government.
And you have talked about the appeasement that the Biden administration has given to Iran from day one. I think you said it was something like $30 billion that this administration allowed Iran to generate by relaxing sanctions on oil sales. Is that right?
$30 billion of unenforced sanctions on oil, right? I mean, that has helped them build their war machine, their nuclear weapons program. And guess what else it helped? It helped them give them $150 million to Hamas and a bunch of weapons that they then used to invade Israel last Saturday and conduct this massacre on the ground. In addition, Maria, you know, this hostage negotiation, getting 5 innocent Americans out in exchange for 6 very culpable Iranian prisoners, culpable of espionage, for lack of a better word. That was an unfair trade in and of itself. But then you throw $6 billion on top of that, wired from South Korea to Doha. They say it's going to be for humanitarian purposes only. President Iran says, I'm going to do whatever I want with the money. Well, on Monday, I'm introducing a bill to put secondary sanctions on the Doha Bank so that it freezes that $6 billion, not temporarily, but forever. I do not want to see $6 billion more dollars going into Iran to feed their terror operations throughout the Middle East.
This is incredible. And do you have confidence that that bill will be able to move, Congressman? I know you're going to be introducing that bill tomorrow morning, but, you know, the administration is trying to message out to the world that it has some kind of a quiet agreement with the Qataris. I read earlier that the former head of Hamas was in Qatar talking with Qatari officials. Should we be trusting Qataris on this? And should we be trusting the Biden administration on whatever efforts it says it's taking around that money? Do you believe that there's a quiet agreement?
I don't trust them. I mean, I think there is a quiet agreement in exchange for the $6 billion. They said that they in a self-regulatory way have gone back to 60% enrichment just on their own voluntarily. I mean, this is the most naive foreign policy, or they're just being downright, disingenuous, which is the lack of trust here. The reason why I don't trust them is the reason why I'm introducing this bill, to make sure that it's permanent. I think there's enough votes in the Senate to get this done. And if anything, Maria, it's going to put a heck of a lot of pressure on the administration to stop this nonsense. We don't need to be sending $6 billion into Iran, for God's sakes, after what they just did to Israel. I think that is just egregious.
Congressman, real quick, connect the dots to China, because I know you've spoken a lot about the aggressiveness coming out of communist China. Does China support Iran?
Oh, of course. I mean, China supports Putin. They both support Iran and the Ayatollah. China and Russia want to be, their narrative is, we're helping the Palestinians and the Arab nations against the little Satan, the occupier Israel, and against the bigger Satan, the United States. That's essentially, their narrative. And both Mr. Putin and China are both involved in this. In fact, Hamas representatives were just in Moscow just a couple weeks ago. God knows what they were talking about before the invasion, but they're all complicit in this. They're all in bed together, China, Russia, Iran. And, we don't want to see this escalate to that level, but that is the real picture.
It sounds like you expect this escalation to happen.
I think the Hezbollah one will, as soon as Israel goes into Gaza. That's the nightmare scenario that I talked about. The Situation Room is, how can Hezbollah not go in when the narratives come out? Hamas is very good at propaganda, as you've seen, and they're going to blame all this on Israel, even though they drew first blood. They were the ones that went in to this massacre, 9/11 style. It's their fault, not Israel's. But when Israel responds, they get blamed for it, and then Hezbollah gets involved with all their rockets. Right. And then if Iran gets in there, then we're talking about issues of war and peace.
Congressman, thank you. We're going to be watching, and your leadership is so important right now. We appreciate your time. Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman, Congressman McCaul. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.